Ladies and gentlemen, World War II was the most devastating conflict in human history. It reshaped nations, redrew borders, and defined the modern world. We know the battles, we know the victories and the defeats, and we know the names of the leaders who stood at the center of the storm. But even after more than 7 decades, not everything about this war is known. Tonight, we turn our attention to the unanswered questions, the shadows of history, the unsolved mysteries of World War II. In a war driven by secrecy, deception, and survival, truth was often buried alongside the fallen. Intelligence agencies operated in silence. Missions were erased from records, witnesses disappeared, and evidence was lost to fire, water, and time. What remains are fragments, stories that refuse to fade. Consider the mystery of lost military operations. Entire units vanished without a trace. Planes took off and never returned. Ships disappeared in calm seas, leaving behind no wreckage, no survivors, and no explanation. Were they destroyed by enemy forces, mechanical failure, or something never officially reported? Even today, historians debate these questions. Then there are the secrets of wartime intelligence. World War II was a battle not only of weapons, but of information. Codes were broken. Double agents played deadly games, and misinformation decided the fate of nations. Yet some intelligence operations were so secret that their full purpose was never revealed. Files remain sealed. Names remain classified, and the true impact of these operations may still be hidden. One of the greatest mysteries involves experimental technology and secret weapons. Both Allied and Axis powers raced to develop advanced machines that could change the course of the war. Some projects were confirmed, others rumored, and some vanished entirely. Were there weapons tested that never made it into official history? Did failed experiments get erased to protect reputations or prevent panic? And then there are the disappearances of key figures and priceless artifacts. High-ranking officials, scientists, and witnesses vanished in the final days of the war. Gold, documents, and cultural treasures were moved, hidden, or stolen, never to be recovered. To this day, search teams continue to uncover bunkers, tunnels, and hidden vaults across Europe and the Pacific. Why do these mysteries matter? Because history is not just about what we know, it is also about what we don't know. Every unanswered question challenges us to look deeper, to question official narratives, and to remember that even the most documented war in history still holds secrets. World War II officially ended in 1945, but its mysteries did not. They live on in archives, in eyewitness memories, and in places where the past still whispers beneath the ground. Each mystery reminds us that truth is often complex, and history is rarely complete. As long as these questions remain unanswered, the story of World War II is not fully finished. And perhaps, somewhere in a forgotten file or a hidden location, the final pieces of the puzzle are still waiting to be found. World War II is often remembered through well-known battles, famous leaders, and decisive moments that change the course of history. Names, dates, and victories are taught in classrooms, documented in books, and replayed in films. Yet behind many of these familiar events lies a deeper layer of uncertainty, hidden truths that history has never fully explained. These unresolved elements are not minor details. They are gaps in the story of a global conflict that involves secrecy on an unprecedented scale. During World War II, information itself was a weapon. Governments carefully controlled what the public knew, what soldiers were told, and what was recorded for the future. Many operations were designed to leave no trace, either to protect strategic advantages or to ensure plausible deniability. As a result, some of the most important actions of the war were deliberately concealed, altered, or destroyed once their immediate purpose was fulfilled. Over time, these decisions created lasting mysteries. Famous events often appear straightforward on the surface, but closer examination reveals unanswered questions. Battles that were officially explained as victories or defeats sometimes involve decisions that remain unclear. Why were certain orders given at critical moments? Why were reinforcements delayed or withdrawn without explanation? In so many cases, commanders acted on intelligence that has never been fully revealed, suggesting that unseen factors influenced outcomes we believe, we understand. One of the most troubling aspects of these hidden truths is the disappearance of first-hand evidence. Many eyewitnesses never returned from missions. Others survived, but were sworn to silence. Some spoke later in life, offering accounts that conflicted with official records. These contradictions have fueled decades of debate, as historians attempt to reconcile personal testimony with government documents that may be incomplete or intentionally misleading. In the chaos of war, entire missions vanished from history. Aircraft launched on operations that were never acknowledged. Naval movements were recorded inaccurately or not at all. When questioned, officials often cited lost records or wartime confusion. Yet the scale and frequency of these gaps suggest that more was hidden than simply misplaced paperwork. These missing pieces continue to raise questions about what truly happened and why certain stories were never told. Another layer of hidden truth lies in how wartime narratives were shaped after the conflict ended. In the aftermath of victory and defeat, nations focused on rebuilding and redefining themselves. Some stories were emphasized to inspire pride, while others were quietly set aside to avoid controversy or political tension. Events that did not fit a clear moral or strategic narrative were often simplified or ignored entirely. This selective memory has had a lasting impact. Once an official version of events becomes accepted, challenging it can be difficult. Documents released decades later sometimes revealed that early explanations were incomplete or incorrect. Even then, the full truth may remain out of reach if key evidence was destroyed or if crucial participants are no longer alive to testify. Hidden truths also exist in the experiences of ordinary individuals whose stories were never recorded. Soldiers, pilots, sailors, and civilians witnessed events that defied explanation. Some saw unexplained decisions, sudden reversals, or mysterious disappearances. Their accounts, often dismissed at the time, hint at realities that do not align neatly with official histories. These personal stories form an unofficial record of the war, one filled with uncertainty and unresolved questions. The fog of war did not lift completely when peace was declared. Instead, it settled into archives, classified files, and unmarked graves. Governments continued to withhold information long after the fighting ended, citing national security or diplomatic concerns. In doing so, they preserved mysteries that still captivate researchers and the public alike. What makes these hidden truths so compelling is not merely the absence of answers, but the possibility that the accepted story of World War II is incomplete. Each unanswered question challenges the idea that history is fixed and final. Instead, it suggests that history is a living record, shaped by what is revealed and what remains concealed. The passage of time has not erased these mysteries. In fact, it has intensified interest in them. As new evidence occasionally surfaces and long-sealed records are opened, small fragments of truth emerge, often raising more questions than answers. This ongoing discovery process reminds us that even the most studied war in human history still holds secrets. Ultimately, hidden truths behind famous events matter because they affect how we understand the past. They force us to confront the limits of official narratives and recognize the role of secrecy in shaping history. World War II was not only fought on battlefields, it was fought in shadows, in silence, and in decisions that were never meant to be known, until every question is answered, if that is even possible. These hidden truths will remain a powerful reminder that history is more complex than it appears. The familiar story of World War II is only part of the truth. The rest lies in what was hidden, what was lost, and what still waits to be discovered. World War II was not only a war of armies and weapons, but a war of information. Intelligence determined victory and defeat, survival and destruction. Every major power involved invested enormous resources into gathering, protecting, and manipulating information. Yet despite the vast amount of intelligence collected during the war, much of it never reached the public record. Some was deliberately classified, some was destroyed, and some simply disappeared. This loss has left behind some of the most enduring mysteries of World War II. During the conflict, intelligence agencies operated under extreme secrecy. Missions were compartmentalized, meaning that only a small number of individuals understood the full scope of any operation. Agents often knew only what they needed to complete their task. This structure protected sensitive information, but it also meant that when individuals were killed or records were destroyed, entire chains of knowledge vanished with them. In many cases, no one was left who could explain what truly happened. Classification played a central role in shaping what the world would later know about the war. Governments labeled vast amounts of information as secret, often with no clear timeline for release. Some files were sealed for decades, while others remained classified to this day. Officials argued that revealing certain details could endanger national security or diplomatic relationships. As a result, historians have been forced to reconstruct events using incomplete data, second-hand accounts, and fragmented documentation. Lost evidence further complicates this picture. Bombings destroyed archives. Retreating forces burned documents to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Naval records sank with ships. Aircraft carrying sensitive materials were shot down or vanished without trace. Each loss removed another piece of the historical puzzle, making it impossible to fully reconstruct certain events. In some instances, evidence was intentionally erased after the war. As former enemies became allies and new global tensions emerged, certain truths became inconvenient. Intelligence activities that had once been justified by wartime necessity were quietly buried to avoid political fallout or moral scrutiny. This deliberate erasure ensured that some questions would never receive official answers. The absence of intelligence records has led to conflicting interpretations of key wartime decisions. Without access to original sources, historians can only speculate about why certain strategies were adopted or abandoned. Did leaders act on information that was later proven false? Were critical warnings ignored or suppressed? The lack of surviving intelligence reports leaves these questions unresolved. Eyewitness testimony, while valuable, cannot fully replace lost documentation. Memories fade, perspectives differ, and personal bias can shape recollection. When testimonies conflict with official records, determining the truth becomes even more difficult. In some cases, individuals claimed knowledge of operations that were never acknowledged, raising doubts about whether the records were incomplete or intentionally altered. Classified intelligence also affects how responsibility is assigned. Without full transparency, it is difficult to determine who made key decisions and why. This ambiguity has shielded some individuals from scrutiny while placing blame on others, based on partial information. The true chain of command behind certain actions may never be fully known. The passage of time has not solved these problems. While some files have been released, they often arrive heavily censored or incomplete. Critical sections are blacked out, names are removed, and references to related documents lead nowhere. Each release raises hopes for clarity, only to reinforce how much information is still missing. What remains is a historical record marked by silence. These gaps are not accidental. They are the result of wartime urgency, post-war politics, and deliberate secrecy. Together, they form a barrier between the present and a full understanding of the past. Classified intelligence and lost evidence remind us that history is shaped as much by what is hidden as by what is revealed. World War II produced an enormous archive of information, yet much of it exists beyond reach. Until every sealed file is opened and every lost record is accounted for, the war's true story will remain incomplete. These mysteries persist not because researchers lack effort, but because the evidence itself has been fractured by time and secrecy. In this way, World War II continues to speak in fragments, a reminder that even the most documented conflict in history still guards its deepest secrets. World War II did not end simply with surrendered documents and victory celebrations. Its unresolved mysteries continued to shape the course of history long after the fighting stopped. These unanswered questions influenced political decisions, military strategies, and global relationships in ways that are often overlooked. While the war's major outcomes are well known, the mysteries surrounding key moments quietly altered how the post-war world was formed. During the conflict, decisions were frequently made under extreme pressure, guided by information that was incomplete, uncertain, or secret. When the true reasons behind these decisions were never revealed, their long-term consequences became difficult to fully understand. Strategic choices that seemed logical at the time later appeared questionable. Yet without full disclosure, historians have been unable to determine whether these actions were based on hidden intelligence, mistaken assumptions, or deliberate deception. One of the most significant impacts of these mysteries was on military planning after the war. Armed forces around the world studied World War II as a blueprint for future conflicts. However, if critical details were missing or intentionally concealed, Lessons learned may have been incomplete or flawed. The absence of full explanations led planners to prepare for threats that might not have existed, while overlooking others that had been hidden from the record. Political outcomes were also shaped by unresolved wartime questions. Alliances formed in the aftermath of World War II were influenced by trust, suspicion, and uncertainty. Nations that once fought side by side sometimes doubted each other's true wartime intentions. Without access to classified decisions and intelligence, leaders were left to interpret history through fragments, shaping foreign policy based on assumptions rather than complete facts. These mysteries also affected the moral understanding of the war. World War II is often described in clear terms of right and wrong, yet unresolved questions complicate that narrative. Actions taken in secrecy, operations that failed without explanation, and decisions that resulted in massive loss of life raise ethical questions that remain unanswered. Without full transparency, it is difficult to judge responsibility or intent, leaving history morally unfinished. Economic and technological developments were influenced as well. Wartime innovations drove post-war progress, but not all projects were openly acknowledged. Some advances appeared suddenly in the years following the war, without clear explanation of their origins. The secrecy surrounding these developments created speculation and uncertainty, shaping global competition and technological rivalry in the decades that followed. The psychological impact of these mysteries should not be underestimated. For veterans and civilians alike, unanswered questions became lasting burdens. Families never learned the fate of missing loved ones. Survivors struggled to understand why certain events unfolded as they did. This collective uncertainty became part of the war's legacy, influencing how societies remembered and processed the conflict. As the Cold War emerged, unresolved World War II mysteries took on new significance. Former allies became rivals, and the secrets of the recent past became tools of suspicion. Information withheld during the war was now guarded even more closely, reinforcing divisions and deepening mistrust. In this way, unanswered questions from World War II directly influenced the geopolitical tension that followed. The passage of time has not erased these effects. Each generation revisits the war seeking clarity, yet often encounters the same barriers of missing evidence and sealed records. The continued existence of these mysteries keeps World War II relevant, not just as a historical event, but as a living influence on modern global affairs. Mysteries that changed history matter because they remind us that outcomes are not shaped solely by what is known and recorded. They are shaped by silence, secrecy, and uncertainty. World War II altered the world in visible ways, but its hidden questions also played a role in defining the modern era. Until those mysteries are fully resolved, if they ever are, history remains incomplete. The world we live in today was shaped not only by the answers of World War II, but by its unanswered questions.